All right, welcome back to the Tundra, episode 21, our first real offseason episode. He's John Kuhn, Packers legend. I'm Matt Schneidman of The Athletic. As always, before we get started, make sure to shoot us a subscribe or a like or a comment on our YouTube, The Tundra GB. Give us a follow, give us a view, give us whatever you want on social media, on IG at The Tundra GB, same handle on X. It's the offseason, and as I've said before, John, this show is not going anywhere once a week during the offseason. This doesn't feel like an offseason episode. There's a lot to talk about. We're going to cover Matt LaFleur's extension, Jeff Hafley's departure for the Miami Dolphins head coaching job, and what steps do the Packers need to take first this offseason to get over the hump? Because they can't just take the next 3 months off. They got to hit the ground running, maybe not right now, but in a little bit. But where we're going to start is talking about this Matt LaFleur extension. The bottom line, what we know publicly, is it's a multi-year extension. This isn't just a prove-it deal with 1 year added on. It's a multi-year extension. And before I get into some background about how this came together and what this entails from an ed policy perspective, I want to go through just our perspectives of it. Do you agree with the decision? Do you not agree with the decision? And why? You go first, and I'll take the floor.
Well, I think just fundamentally, when you have this Packer team that we believed were so close to making a run this past year before the litany of injuries that struck them, it'd be hard to reset that. It'd be hard to restart that. And if you brought in a new head coach, you're not just resetting the defensive side of the ball, which they already have to deal with. You're going to be resetting the offensive side of the ball schematically, fundamentally, foundationally, and with their identities. And I don't think you want to do that on both sides of the football. Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur, they have grown throughout the last 3 years, and they have had moments where they stall out, but you get to see at least what their ceiling is. And they can continue to grow in that realm and try and increase on that efficiency, while defensively they try to rebuild and retool and restart, knowing that Jeff Hafley is leaving. I like it, and I think that the Packers are going to be one of the top 5 favorite teams to win the Super Bowl at the start of next football season.
Yeah, look, I've been catching some heat online, and I probably look at the replies and the comments a little too much. That's just my nature. People will call me a shill for the organization, a PR statement. Look, I tried to give my objective opinion, and is Matt LaFleur without flaw? Absolutely not. And I'm not going to dismiss and push aside anyone who thinks he shouldn't have gotten extended. There's a sound argument for that perspective if you're listening to this and have that. You know, the blown leads this year, the lack of composure in the most important game of the season, the inability to get over the hump so far. I get it. You have a sound argument. But if I had to choose, gun to my head, I would say that extending him is the right decision for 3 major reasons. John, you touched on it a little bit. The injuries. He had them looking like a legitimate Super Bowl contender before Micah Parsons, Zach Tom, and then add in Tucker Kraft, Devontae Wyatt, Elton Jenkins. Like, if this team is healthy, and I know every team has injuries, if this team is fully healthy, even missing 1 or 2 of those guys, as long as Parsons is healthy, this team might still be playing. So I think you have to cut him some slack there. The other one, like you said, Jordan Love established himself this season, I think, as a top 5 quarterback in the league, an elite quarterback. I don't think you want to mess up that chemistry that he has with LaFleur. LaFleur has proven to be the right offensive mind for Jordan Love. It's the most important position in sports, arguably. You got to keep that synergy going. And then number 3, we talked about it a little bit on the last episode. I think there is value in what the pillars of the locker room have to say. Not just because if you don't extend LaFleur, you risk losing the locker room, but because if you want to follow the blueprint for a Super Bowl culture, you listen to guys like Micah Parsons, like Tucker Kraft, like Josh Jacobs, Xavier McKinney, Jordan Love. All those guys staunchly backed Matt LaFleur. So I think for those 3 reasons, the Jordan Love reason, the player feedback reason, the injuries reason, I think it was the right decision. Now, we don't know exactly the terms of the extension. That might add another layer to this analysis. But just from what we know, I think it's the right decision. Not clearly the right decision, but if I had to choose, I would say ed policy made the right call.
Yeah, and there's something in addition to be laid out here. Everybody talks about Matt LaFleur, 7 years as the head coach here for the Green Bay Packers. I saw an interesting stat that only 2 coaches have won Super Bowls past 7 years being with their team. And I can't remember exactly who those 2 coaches are. But to this point, Matt LaFleur, if you look at his coaching tenure in Green Bay, you would have to say you have the Aaron Rodgers tenure with Matt LaFleur and the Jordan Love tenure with Matt LaFleur. That's going to be entering year 4 with Jordan Love as the starting quarterback and Matt LaFleur as the head coach. And there's something to be said about people that say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. Well, we don't know if they're going to do the same thing. What kind of swing are they going to take at defensive coordinator? What kind of changes is Matt LaFleur going to address with his team when it comes to conduct on the field or conduct detrimental, i.e. mental mistakes or personal fouls or things to that nature? How are they going to address those things? And when you bring a coach back now that has missed it a few times, there is a sense of urgency and a sense of cleaning up those fine details that the Packers missed out on last year. They know exactly where they were inefficient this past year, aside from the injuries, because even with those injuries, they had the Chicago Bears on the ropes. They still should have won that wild card game down in Chicago. And you would clearly point out to it was how they performed in the second half and the fourth quarter as to why they didn't. They can fix those problems.
The stat you mentioned, I think Rob Domofsky had it in his story a couple days ago. I'm reading this from his tweet. Only one coach in NFL history reached the Super Bowl for the first time, or kind of a different stat than you, for the first time after his 7th season with the same team, and that was John Madden with the Raiders in his 8th season. So, as he writes, and as is evident to everybody, Matt LaFleur, in Ed Policy's eyes, still gives the Packers the best chance to reach that Super Bowl. Now, some background on this decision. I know I've said on this podcast before, and I still stand by it, that I was told by someone inside the building that I trust early in the season, or it might have been preseason, that Ed Policy was on the fence or up in the air, whatever term you want to use, about bringing Matt LaFleur back. Now, was that the entire reason he didn't extend him with 2 years left? No, I'm of the belief that that's just how they do things around here. They're not going to give extensions with 2 years left. It wasn't because of a disappointment. I think it was more so, okay, let's see what you got. You have a year to show me that you should get an extension. And the reason I wrote that column midseason was because, based on what I was told, I felt that there was a chance that Matt LaFleur could be coaching for his job. Now, what I'm now being told after the season is that, and this is by sources inside the building, that Ed Policy felt very good about extending them before the season. And, you know, it didn't seem like he was ever leaning toward not extending him. And I heard that after the season, they barely discussed the contract because it was almost a foregone conclusion. And that Ed Policy basically used the past 7 years to make his decision, and the Bears game had little to no bearing. And I was told it would have taken something, quote unquote, very significant to happen this season for Matt LaFleur not to be offered an extension. My point in laying that out is this. There have been some people online, when I reported the other day that it would have taken something very significant to not offer LaFleur an extension, people say, oh, so all this hot seat talk was nothing. Your report was BS, or your column, the premise of your column was BS. My job is to gather information from places I trust and filter it as best I can and just try and do the best job I can presenting the reality of the situation. I'm not calling anyone a liar, but I still stand by what I've said on this podcast before. But at the same time, it's also my job to present the information that I'm told now. So what is truly in Ed Policy's heart, we'll only know if he's hooked up to a lie detector test. But the bottom line is Matt LaFleur is back, and Brian Gutekunst and Russ Balljohn are also scheduled to be back. Extension's not done yet, to my knowledge, but they want to create that synergy with all three of those guys still reporting to Ed Policy as the team president.
Well, can't both things be true too, right? Can it be true that Ed Policy felt really good about Matt LaFleur, Brian Gutekunst, Russ Ball, all before the season started, but also the job is not done? I mean, the job is still not done. The job is to win a Super Bowl. And the job is not done, meaning you didn't extend them yet, right? This thing plays itself out. Matt LaFleur clearly got over a couple hurdles this year that we saw him not get over in the year before. 1-5 in 2024 in the division. At one point in time was 4-0 in the division this year. You could say he got over that hurdle before the injuries started to decimate this football team. Not beating good football teams last year. They had a number of quality victories this year. I will still say this. I don't know if the Packers played a complete game all season long. The most complete game they played was probably against Detroit in week 1. So they still have plenty of room to grow and plenty of room to get better, but they also checked a lot of boxes this year that you were looking forward to. In addition to that, when you talk about not just the development of Jordan Love, but the development of his backup quarterback, Malik Willis, who was basically handed over to the Packers for a box of peanuts, Matt LaFleur turned into a pretty capable, viable option at the backup quarterback position, and he's going to get an opportunity to start somewhere in the National Football League. So player development is also a part of coaching along with winning football games.
Absolutely. And look, what I was told is that Ed Policy, a lot of people were talking about the structure. And was it going to change after Ed Policy's first season in charge? In the past, in this organization, it's been head coach reports to the GM. Under Mark Murphy a couple of years ago, and this is what Ed kept, is all three of those guys, Russ, Goody, and Matt, report to Ed. Now, what I was told is basically Ed spent his first season in charge closely observing how those three communicated. And the way it was described to me is it's more about kind of the people in that structure rather than the structure itself, which I get. I don't think the structure matters all that much as long as there's a solid working environment among everybody. You're going to be running decisions past everybody regardless. Maybe there are some small differences if Goody's at the top of the food chain as opposed to Ed. Bottom line is I don't think it makes too much of a drastic difference, but nonetheless, it's not changing. I was also told Ed did not give Matt an ultimatum of you have to make this change to your coaching staff. Matt has full autonomy, if that's the right word, over the staff. So we'll see how this pans out, because obviously there is more urgency. When you get paid more, there's more pressure to win and win right now, win a big game right now. So,
well, and don't you think it's the right move to not have any prerequisites if you're going to extend a coach? If you're going to put that type of faith, if you're going to put that type of confidence behind them, you give them the confidence to be able to make their own bed and make their own choices, select their own staff, fire who they want to fire, don't fire who they want to hire, who you want to hire, and play the players that you want to play. I think it's a great call there by Ed to give Matt the reins, because if you are going to extend him, you're saying that you have confidence in him, so then you show them with your actions that you do.
Yeah, and what I was told, and I totally agree with it, and I'm sure you do too, is that Ed considers Matt a very impressive, a fantastic player developer, team developer. Obviously, not all player and team development has been what fans and the organization would like, but specifically at the quarterback position, Matt LaFleur is a great quarterback coach, great quarterback developer. That is evident in the steps Jordan Love has taken to reach the elite tier of quarterbacks in the NFL, in my opinion. Going back to my first point, that's part of the reason you keep him, I think, because you don't want to disrupt that chemistry. So Matt LaFleur is not the only coaching news that we got this week. The Packers will need a new defensive coordinator. After the break, what's the fallout from Jeff Hafley going to the Miami Dolphins? Is he going to take coaches on either side of the ball from Green Bay with him? And we're going to give you a handful of names and their connections to Matt LaFleur and the Packers that you need to watch for the potential next Packers defensive coordinator. Stick with us. You're listening to The Tundra. Hey guys, Matt Schneidman here from the Tundra podcast. With the holiday season here, it means that we in the Wisconsin area can expect some nasty snowstorms, which means icy roads. I know for myself that if I ever find myself in a situation where I got injured because another driver lost control of their car, my first call is to nobody else other than Nicolet Law. They're ready to help and will be there when I need them. So if you've been injured, you shouldn't be expected to manage your claim on top of everything else. Call 1-855-NICOLET. That's 1-855-NICOLET, or go to nicoletlaw.com. Welcome back to the Tundra, episode 21, presented by Nicolet Law. John, Jeff Hafley is the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. Well-deserved promotion, if you will, for him. Green Bay South down there with him and former longtime Packers executive John Eric Sullivan, the new general manager in Miami. So Jeff Hafley leaves. For the Packers, the obvious is who's going to be the new defensive coordinator. We're going to get into that, list some candidates, what we think of them. But where my mind also goes is Jeff Hafley going to take anybody from the Packers staff with him? What could be the fallout, not just on defense, but on offense as well? So obviously we don't know specifically, what Jeff Hafley thought of each member of his staff, but where my mind goes is he's worked with Ryan Downard, the DB's coach in Green Bay, even before Green Bay. He likes Derek Ansley, the defensive pass game coordinator. Sean Duggan, the Packers linebackers coach, worked with Hafley at Boston College. Could he bring some of those guys? And then who do you like going up against in practice on the offensive side of the ball? I'd look at, Sean Mannion to call plays in Miami. He's the Packers quarterbacks coach. That could be an option. Could he bring Stenovich? Could he bring Jason Vrabel? Like, Packers are going to have more replacements than just at defensive coordinator, if I were to guess.
Yeah, it's funny. How big could Green Bay South get? Right? Could it include Malik Willis? I mean, John Eric Sullivan's down there too. It's not just Jeff Hafley that's making these decisions that has the input. They're gonna discuss over this really hard and probably brainstorm over guys that they spent a lot of time with in Green Bay over the last 2 years as Hafley was the defensive coordinator here. And yes, you mentioned some really good names when you're talking about promoting people like Jason Vrabel, Sean Mannion, even Adam Stenovich on the offensive side. The defensive side, many links to Jeff Hafley, not just this past year, but in his previous spots, his previous stays. So there could be a significant overhaul to this Packers staff because they do end up taking promotions and leaving, which almost puts Matt LaFleur at a tough spot right now, because is he going to have to negotiate against Jeff Hafley while trying to replace Jeff Hafley? If he doesn't want a Sean Mannion to leave, if he doesn't want a Jason Vrabel to leave, how can he do that while Adam Stenovich is the offensive coordinator? And how does he go about this process? Normally, if you don't want a coach to leave, you promote them themselves. You give them another title and you start paying them more money. But these guys want to advance in their careers. They want to do big things. And coaches normally don't say, no, we're not going to allow you to leave, even though they can potentially say that. Organizations can say, you're not allowed to leave because you're under contract with us. They generally don't do that to promotions and hold players back. They will give them a title that gives them more pay. So a lot of tough spots here for Matt LaFleur while he's first trying to replace Jeff Hafley.
Right. You bring up a great point that it all depends on if it would be a promotion or not. For example, Kyle Shanahan was asked the other day if he'd allow Clay Kubiak, his offensive coordinator, to interview for play calling offensive coordinator jobs because Shanahan calls the plays in San Francisco. And he said, well, Clay calls plays too. He's like, I'm not letting him leave for another OC job. He calls plays here. He's important here. So let's, for example, say Jeff Hafley wants Sean Mannion, the Packers' first-year quarterbacks coach, to be his offensive coordinator and play caller in Miami.
Screaming up the ranks and the praise of everybody in the NFL. Everybody loves his mind, the fact that he has a background, not just as a coach, but as a player in the NFL, and all the things that brings to the table.
Without a doubt. He's going to be a head coach someday, but there's a reason that he went from offensive assistant to QB coach, kind of jumped over Connor Lewis, and then could be an offensive coordinator in Miami next year. For him, if LaFleur wants to keep him, I don't know if you can, because like you said, you might have to add something to his title. So the only feasible way for LaFleur to keep Sean Mannion, who he thinks extremely highly of, is to not only promote him to offensive coordinator, but Sean Mannion's not calling the plays in Green Bay. LaFleur is, and rightfully so. So you'd have to add passing game coordinator probably to his title, but that's Jason Vrabel's title, who I also think LaFleur likes. But then what do you do with Adam Stenovich? Like, there are a lot of moving pieces that are going to be sorted out here over the coming days. And for Mannion, it's an easy decision. Go to Miami, be the main play caller. You're the OC because you have a defensive-minded head coach, if that is indeed what Jeff Hafley wants to do. Now, Jason Vrabel has been a successful wide receivers coach and passing game coordinator here. Could he be on the list? Could Matt LaFleur's brother, Mike LaFleur, who has experience with Jeff Hafley, be on the list? Could he say, okay, I like Adam Stenavich. I think he deserves a chance to call plays. He's gotten a head coach interview in the past with the Bears, I believe, last year. Let's have him come down to Miami and call plays. Or will he go outside the Packers organization for someone else? I know Jeff Hafley and Mike McDaniel have coached together, but I don't think Mike McDaniel is going to be the OC for the team that just fired him. So I don't think they have to worry about that. Will be interesting, though. My official guess is Sean Mannion leaves to become the OC in Miami, but we will see how it pans out.
Yeah, I think I think you're very hot on a trail right there. That could very possibly be the case, unless they decide that they want somebody that's been there, done that before. And I don't know if that would be the case for Hafley and John Eric Sullivan, just simply because when you have that experience with a guy, when you get to see how his process works, see what his football mind is on a day-to-day basis, that generally tends to hold a lot of weight versus when you're meeting these guys, you're watching their film, and if you don't have history with them, you're judging an interview. All right, a couple hours with a guy to try and get to know him as good as the 2 years that they spent with Sean Mannion, Jason Vrabel, etc.
All right, maybe what Packer fans will care more about: who is going to be the next defensive coordinator? Matt LaFleur's fourth defensive coordinator in now his 8th season. This one, obviously, for good reason, because Hafley got a head coaching job. But he inherited Mike Pettin from Mike McCarthy's staff, kept him on. You hired Joe Barry. You hired Jeff Hafley. Now, who are some candidates that could be the Packers' next defensive coordinator? John, you want to know who my top candidate is?
Yeah.
Raheem Morris, the former Falcons head coach. He was the Rams defensive coordinator when they won the Super Bowl. He was the Rams DC for 3 years under Sean McVay before he went to Atlanta, went 8-9 in 2 years with Atlanta, fired. Him and Matt LaFleur are like this. They coached together for 2 years on Washington's staff. They coached together for 2 years on Atlanta's staff. They haven't coached together since 2016, but Raheem Morris is a very well-respected defensive mind. Just a couple weeks ago, Matt LaFleur called Raheem Morris one of his closest friends. He's called Raheem Morris his guy in the past. That's where I'm looking if I'm throwing a dart at who the next Packers defensive coordinator is.
Yeah, why stop there? Go real big. What about Brian Flores? His contract's up in Minnesota, and word on the street is he didn't like the way that the initial negotiations went with Minnesota. So is there an opportunity there to steal him as a defensive coordinator, not just strengthening your team, but weakening the Minnesota Vikings going forward? That's a very possible scenario. You would have to pay a lot of money for Brian Flores to come over, but goodness gracious, when I tell you a defense that's very hard to prepare for, that's extremely intimidating for opposing quarterbacks, that's a guy right there that puts it out there. And you know what? His defense was predicated on a secondary being able to do a lot of different stuff. Well, guess what the Packers have? They have some safeties that can do a lot of different things. Xavier McKinney, Evan Williams, Javon Bullard. I think that could be a great fit in Green Bay as well.
He was on my list as well. I posted a story on The Athletic today, 10 potential DC candidates. Brian Flores was on the list, and I dug up a quote from Matt LaFleur before facing the Vikings in Week 18. I think Flores is one of the best in the business, and he is so good at what he does. Matt LaFleur certainly would sleep better before facing the Minnesota Vikings if Brian Flores is on his side. Okay, a couple other maybe unheralded names. And when I say unheralded, I mean don't have coordinator experience. This first name I'm going to say may not be familiar to a lot of Packer fans, Christian Parker. I believe he's 34 years old. Yeah, 34. He's the Philadelphia Eagles defensive pass game coordinator and DB's coach. He interviewed for the Packers DC job before it went to Jeff Hafley. Christian Parker was also a quality control coach on the Packers staff on the defensive side, I believe, in Matt LaFleur's first 2 years here. Matt LaFleur was asked about Christian Parker before facing the Eagles this year. Said he's a guy that I hold in high regard just by the quality of work that he did when he was here with us. He said, I think he's a really good up-and-coming coach, and I'm sure it's only a matter of time before he gets his opportunity to become a coordinator. Jordan Schultz reported that Christian Parker will interview for the Packers DC job again this cycle. He also helped Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean be first-team All-Pros this year. So that's one to watch as well, John Kuhn.
Yeah, it's kind of hard not to see Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean winning more All Pros as they go along in their careers. But with that being said, this brings up the case of where the Packers are right now and what do they see in young potential first-time defensive coordinators calling plays. I can remember when Anthony Campanelli left to go down to Jacksonville. Man, we lost a good one. He's a great guy. He's going to be great as a defensive coordinator. And if you have that type of ability to be able to project on coaches, just like you can on players, they were absolutely right. He went down to Jacksonville and in his first time being a defensive coordinator, took them from 27th and 31st respectively to I think 8th and 11th defensively down there in Jacksonville. Their defense improved mightily with him as the defensive coordinator. So it takes a little foresight and projecting with guys that have not done the defensive coordinator before versus you're going to have to pay a little bit more to bring in a guy like a Raheem Morris or Brian Flores, somebody that's been there, done that.
Ready for this next name, John Kuhn? Certainly not an unheralded name. Before I say his name, I'm going to list off what he's done in the past 5-6 seasons. Helped the Cowboys defense rank third in the NFL from 2020 to 2024 with 82 interceptions as their DB coach. This past year, as the Chicago Bears defensive pass game coordinator and DB's coach, helped the Bears lead the league in interceptions. Your former teammate, John Kuhn, and Green Bay Packers Hall of Famer Al Harris. What would you think of that? Does he want to be a DC in Green Bay?
Who knows? I can imagine every coach wants to see what they can achieve and see how high that they can climb. Very few coaches just want to be an assistant their entire life. Some of them are out there, but Dirty, there's one thing I know, he's going to bring that type of mentality. And guess what? He went to Chicago and only helped them become the best team at intercepting the football this past year in the NFL. He's definitely got a knack for his secondary taking the football away. And it'd be nice to bring a familiar face home like Al Harris.
Couple other names, Jim Leonhard, obviously. He seemed to be in the mix. Not the Hafley cycle, but the Joe Barry cycle. He told the Wisconsin
Now,
State...
Can you confirm something for me?
I know exactly what you're going to ask, and I don't know the answer.
Oh, goodness gracious. That seems to be the biggest bugaboo right now. The Packers say they didn't offer him.
Right.
He said he took himself out of the running. I don't know which one. Maybe they could both be true because sometimes semantics play a big part here. But Jim Leonhard, a few years ago, he was here. It was close, and it didn't happen.
Yeah, I'm looking at a story right now, and Jason Wilde and Tom Oates, who know Leonhard because, they have Wisconsin ties. Jim Leonhard told Jason and Tom Oates in 2021 that he turned down the Packers DC job because he wasn't ready to return to the NFL. Obviously now Jim Leonhard, Wisconsin native, Wisconsin Badger, former NFL player, has been the Denver Broncos assistant head coach and defensive pass game coordinator for the last couple seasons and really helped that team become what it is now on the defensive side of the ball. Could he be in the mix again? I've seen, I think, Wilde said on his show that he doesn't know. I don't know if this was his informed speculation or just his opinion. He said he doesn't know if Matt LaFleur would want to dip back into that well after Leonhard kind of stiffed him. But I also saw Bill Huber report that the Packers never offered him the job. So I would need to look into that. I'm sure I could get an answer, but I haven't done that. But nonetheless, he's another name that we can float out there. And that's kind of what we do this time of year is just float out possibilities. Zach Orr, Ravens defensive coordinator. He was reportedly offered the DC job before Hafley, turned it down to stay in Baltimore for a promotion under John Harbaugh. Denard Wilson reportedly interviewed for the job as well before the Packers hired Hafley. He's the Titans DC. Both Orr and Wilson are on staffs that just fired their head coach. So they could be on the move as well. Then a couple other names I had listed. I would think the top internal option is DeMarcus Covington. He has play calling experience before with the Patriots under Gerard Mayo. Then obviously there was staff turnover there with Mike Vrabel. And then a couple guys from Buffalo. Like if Sean McDermott doesn't get a head coaching job, which he probably will, could you kick the tires on him? Bobby Babich, the Bills play calling defensive coordinator who interviewed for the Packers job last cycle, but stayed in Buffalo for a promotion to call plays. Could he be on the move? So I think a lot of intriguing names. But if I had to guess right now, I'm going Raheem Morris will be the next Packers defensive coordinator.
And a lot of what happens in the NFL comes from that brotherhood, right? It comes from the friendships and the bonds and the working the long hours side by side together. And boy, Matt LaFleur and Raheem Morris really has that history.
They do. I don't expect this decision to be made tomorrow as we record this midday on Tuesday, January 20th. But I think regardless of when they make it, there are a couple teams that need defensive coordinators. I think they'll make the right choice. I think it's going to be Raheem Morris. And John, the Packers are an intriguing opening for any defensive coach. They got Micah Parsons. They got Xavier McKinney, Edgerrin Cooper, potentially Quay Walker, Devontae Wyatt. Sure, there are some things to shore up at corner. Is Rashawn Gary going to be back? Maybe some more pieces on the D-line. But if I'm a D coordinator, I'm saying I get to call plays for Micah Parsons.
Yeah.
That's
Micah freaking Parsons.
That's my first choice.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. It's got to be a very intriguing job. Just like the head coach of the Green Bay Packers is always a very intriguing job because of the quarterback that they have. The DC for the Green Bay Packers with Micah Parsons here, with Xavier McKinney, with Edgerrin Cooper, like you said, they got guys at all three levels. Yeah, I'd be very into that.
Couple more things we'll get to after the break here. What's the next step the Packers need to take to get over the hump? And as we said, that doesn't start 3 months from now. It starts now. Are there any other coaching changes they need to make on staff? Is it up to the players more so? And I want to get John Kuhn's insight on what exactly players do for the next 3 months. What do coaches do for the next 3 months? We'll tap into that and much more. You're listening to The Tundra. Welcome back to The Tundra, episode 21. This segment is brought to you by Potawatomi Sportsbook. Head to Potawatomi Casino Hotel for the big game on February 8th. Is it going to be the Broncos, the Patriots, the Seahawks, the Rams? Watch at the bar, attend a tailgate party, or reserve premium seating.
Oh boy, the big game it is going down February 8th. And where are you watching it? Well, get the unrivaled experience at Potawatomi Casino Hotel, Milwaukee. Watch the big game at 1100 Bar and Lounge, Rock and Brews, or Small Bar. It doesn't really matter. All of them are fantastic. Reserve premium seating inside Potawatomi Sportsbook. Tickets and reservations are available starting January the 8th, so they started a few weeks ago. Plenty of food and drink specials, including $10 off that $100 beer tube. Matt, when's the last time you had a beer tube?
Ooh, it's been a while. I've cut down on my alcohol consumption. Not that it was a lot before. I just don't.
Well, you can get NA beer tubes.
Oh, there's a spider on the wall. Hold on. Let me kill a spider live on the podcast. That's good podcasting. Got it.
Are you afraid of spiders?
No, I was the designated spider bug killer when I lived with 6 of my friends my senior year in college because
were they afraid of spiders?
I was the one who was least afraid of them.
This is really starting to clear things up for me.
How? How so?
You just wigged out because there was a spider crawling up your wall.
Yeah, because
how big was it? Was it a daddy longlegger?
No, it's tiny. It's the tiniest spider you could imagine. But I just wanted to assert my dominance on this podcast. You know, physically, you assert your dominance over me whenever we're together and on this podcast. I needed to kill a spider to kind of get some of that dominance back.
You didn't even flex. You didn't even try and intimidate.
Yeah, nobody wants to see that. All right, let's get back to some Packers talk. Last time I had a beer tube long time ago, but I was at Potawatomi recently to watch some college football playoff games. It's an incredible viewing experience. It's the Vegas of the Midwest. You got to go there for the big game on February 8th. All right.
I think we should go down there, do a podcast, and order a beer tube each. Do the podcast until the beer tubes are done.
Okay. We can arrange that.
Well, the room will be scheduled for you to stay afterwards. Don't worry.
All right. John, as we mentioned last week, I think it was Micah Parsons, Keyshawn Nixon. Unprompted, they mentioned on Locker Cleanout Day, we got 98 days till we're back together. That was clearly a number floated out there by Matt LaFleur. 98 days to get your body right. Take a little break and come back here for OTAs, 98 days or whatever first day of the offseason program that is. As a player, what did you do during these next couple months? How long of a break do you take? And what's your best guess at what these players are doing in these next couple days, weeks, months? And what's the coaching staff doing as well as they prepare to turn the page?
You know, it's crazy as they say 98 days. It was never 98 days when I was playing. And the 98 days is basically what it is until somewhat of a mandatory attendance is expected at 1265. These guys won't take anywhere near 9 or 10 days, right, off. They will get back into this very quickly and start working out and start training, getting their distance from the facility, getting back home, whether that's California, Texas, Florida, or anywhere in the Midwest, wherever these guys live. A few will stay in town. Guys rehabbing like Micah Parsons and Tucker Kraft, they'll stay around the facility a lot more than other players as they try and rehab and recover from their injuries. But this is right back into it. And now when they say 98 days, they mean 98 days when you come back, you be ready to roll. You be at 100%. You be in shape. You be ready to attack this new playbook if you're on the defensive side, and offensively, any wrinkles that we put into this. But the 98 days is clearly for a mental break, a mental refresh, because physically, you got to get right back into this. You got to be prepared and ready when you come back. It used to be, it was about 2 or 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks before guys started coming back to the facility, started working back out within the building, trying to get in shape for this. I can remember when offseason programs started the beginning of March. But you would come back and guys would be out of shape and they would take their time to get back and ready. Now you don't start until the week before the draft. That's the end of April. So you got to take care of your own business because it's your responsibility now.
So on the field, on the coaching staff, where do the Packers go from here? I'm not going to put you on the spot as a team employee and say which coaches do the Packers need to fire. But do you foresee potentially coaching changes coming? Even though Ed Policy, as I mentioned earlier on the podcast, as I was told, Ed Policy did not go into those end of season meetings and say, you got to make these changes. And I was told that Brian Gutekunst and Russ Ball would not do that either. Matt LaFleur has full say over the coaching staff. Do you think it's something that LaFleur is contemplating as we record this here midday on Tuesday, January 20th? We got to shake some things up on offense. We already discussed there might be changes on both sides of the ball coming because Jeff Hafley could take some guys with him to Miami. But could LaFleur on his own say, you know what, to get over the hump, we need to shuffle some things around?
Yes. And I think it's going to come more out of necessity because of the Jeff Hafley move, because of John Eric Sullivan's move, and the potential that some of these coaches could be leaving for different pastures in other organizations. And it doesn't matter who changes and who moves. I think a couple things that need to be addressed for this Packers team is we need to get back to physical brand of football with our offensive line. We need to run the football better going into 2025 or 2026. And we need to be able to finish football games. And how do you find that? How do you create that type of mentality in your football team? Well, those are the answers that Matt LaFleur is trying to come up with here during this offseason. But the first things first, he's got to clean up his staff. He's got to get his staff figured out before they can even start the self-scouting evaluation from this past football season. But offensively, for me, it starts with running the football. Defensively, stopping the run. We saw both of those be big things. And again, the roster is going to be phenomenally different next year as well because roster turnover is about 10 to 15 players every year as well. So a lot of things are going to be different going into 2026. And how much of that, well, we'll find out in the coming weeks.
Where it starts for me, John, is the offensive line. When you played on this team, even after you played on this team, you had Bakhtiari, Lang, Sitton, Lindsley, Bulaga. You didn't need to worry about Aaron Rodgers getting touched. He would go weeks without getting touched. Jersey clean. If Jordan Love has a clean pocket, even if it's not for 5 seconds, he's unstoppable pretty much. But we saw in the second half of the Denver game, we saw in the second half of the Bears game, pass protection issues, whether it's just physical deficiencies or communication issues. That is, on offense at least, the biggest weakness for this team is up front. So there's going to be some moving parts. And when we talk about the first step to improving this team, it starts there for me, the offensive line. These coaches need to have a plan for how to improve this offensive line. Could that include moving on from offensive line coach Luke Butkus? Could it include moving on from offensive coordinator Adam Stenavich, who still has a hand in the development of the offensive line? He was obviously the former O-line coach here before he got promoted. That group needs to be much better for this team to get as far as we think it can go. Rasheed Walker is probably not going to be back. because he's a serviceable left tackle in the NFL, and those don't grow on trees. So he's going to get paid a crap ton of money in free agency that the Packers don't want to pay him. Aaron Banks needs to play up to his potential, which did not really happen in year one as much as it should have, and he battled injury. Sean Ryan improved at center. Could they bring him back? Elton Jenkins, what do they do with him? They could cut him for cap reasons. Do they move him back to left guard? Do they cut Banks?
And he's coming back from injury.
And he's coming back from a major injury. Anthony Belton, I thought, showed some high upside stuff, but he's not a polished prospect yet. Zach Tom is easily their best O-lineman, but he's recovering for the next 6 months after surgery on his knee. So many questions, so many moving parts on the O-line. That is priority number one. If I'm a Packers coach, which thankfully for the Packers, I'm not, although some fans don't seem like they would mind that right now with how they feel about the Packers assistant coaches. I think that's where it starts for me, getting this O-line figured out.
Yes, and the roster side, that'll be figured out by Brian Gutekunst. On the coaching side, what I'm taking a deep dive into as Matt LaFleur is, how did we prepare that offensive line for the situations they were in second half of Denver after Zach Tom went out, and the next 4 games that followed after that? Did we give them max protect opportunities that were efficient for them to be able to be successful? Did we give enough chip and thump help out of the tight ends and the running back? Should we have addressed a new protection at that point in time? So you're not going to be able to do a clean sweep of this offensive line and bring a bunch of new players in. A lot of these guys are still going to be here next year, and especially those recovering from injuries. You're going to have to show some sort of attention game planning wise going forward on how you can improve this offensive line.
A lot of where the Packers proceed this offseason is contingent on how these guys recover from injuries. Like you said, offensive line is one thing, but across the board, when you think of like implementing, I wouldn't say it's a new culture, but implementing kind of the standard that needs to be followed this offseason and into next season to get back to a Super Bowl, 2 of the top 3 guys, I would say, as I mentioned earlier, that you follow for that standard, that culture, are Micah Parsons and Tucker Kraft. And they can't be on the field because they're recovering from torn ACLs. They're both not going to be ready to start training camp. Tucker Kraft probably going to be ready week 1. Micah Parsons probably not for another couple weeks after that. But how are you going to get that dog mentality, that culture that Micah Parsons talked about a week ago on cleanout day of just outstraining the guy next to you? How are you going to get that if Micah Parsons isn't on the field? That's why I said it's on the players too, non-Micah Parsons, non-Tucker Kraft, to implement that culture, that mindset, starting from April or whenever they come back. And yes, we talk about the coaches a lot. It's on the coaches. But Micah's point is that if we really want to take that next step, it's on the players. And I agree with him.
Yeah, it's always player driven. The best teams are led by their players, not just their coaches. And without Micah Parsons on the defensive side, it's going to have to be Edgerrin Cooper, Xavier McKinney, Evan Williams. It's going to have to be led by those guys. On the offensive side, it's going to be Josh Jacobs and most likely somebody on the offensive line, right? That's going to have to step up. Maybe Zach Tom when he comes back from injury. The players need to understand just how close they were, and they have to pick up their end of the slack as well. Because, quite frankly, if you're missing some star players at the beginning of this football season, you're going to be playing those major roles yourself. You're going to have to go in there and lead these football teams yourself. I would be surprised if Tucker Kraft came back for game 1. I'd be surprised if Micah Parsons played in September, but they're both claiming that could be the target date for both of them. And I sure hope that's the case. But if it isn't, who's going to step up in the interim?
And then you got to consider Devontae Wyatt, Zach Tom. All these guys have lengthy, months-long recoveries ahead. And you hope those recoveries go well. But we've seen in the past with guys like David Bakhtiari, something hits a snag and there are setbacks and you're never really the same player. So if you're a Packers fan, if you're the Packers, you just got to hope those guys are staying true to their rehab, their recovery. And if I know Micah Parsons and Tucker Kraft the way I think I do, which is obviously not extremely well, but just seeing the way they talk, the way they play, I don't think being committed to their rehab is going to be any problem for those guys.
No, they'll put into it everything that you would expect and then some. And if their target, whatever their target date is, if they come back not by that target date, they will be disappointed. And that's what you want in a leader, because you can lead even without being on the field. You can lead by example, showing guys on how you're recovering and how you're working out in there, and you can lead from the meeting rooms, but somebody else is going to have to step up and pick up the slack on the field during the practices, during the OTAs.
All right. Well, it's going to be a busy offseason for the Packers. New defensive coordinator, potentially new coaches. We didn't even touch on Rich Bisaccia. I think he's going to be back. I think it's well known here in Green Bay that the problems go deeper than the coach on special teams. We could do a whole episode on that, and maybe we will at some point. But I think Rich is going to be back. Fans are not going to be happy about that. That's just my opinion. New defensive coordinator, potentially new coaches. No first-round draft pick, though, but a lot of interesting free agent decisions coming up for the Packers. As we've mentioned, this is a year-long show, so we're going to have shows devoted specifically to all that. We'll have everything covered for you at some point this offseason. But for now, he's John, I'm Matt. We appreciate you listening. We'll talk to you next week.